love this conference. Came last year as an attendee, and I bought my ticket as soon as they went on sale. But then Carl obviously gave me the opportunity to speak, so I thought, bonus, I've got a refund. But then the hard work began, because actually, what Carl didn't mention is he saw me do an hour talk. And he said, well, Dan, you've got to do this in 35 minutes now. So, I thought I could either talk really fast, or I'll just give you a quick helicopter view of that talk, and that's what I'm going to do. You've got the pleasure of having the second old bloke called Dan here today. I think that's actually a good theme for a conference, maybe we could do. So we could have lots of old blokes called Dan giving some conference stuff. Maybe that's an idea for the next Lean Agile Brighton, you never know. Right, here we go then. So my talk, legacy, fund products, start an evolution. Actually, good segue from the last talk, because they talked about agile funding, how it makes the teams more agile. So thank you for that segue. My name's Dan Gibson. I work for Agility. I'm head of consultancy at Agility. I'm not going to do a big spiel about what I do, because I don't really have time, and I want to get on with this. I work for Agility, but just for the moment, I want you to imagine I work for Legacy PLC. They're a traditional organisation, and they're going agile. Come on, Agilists. All right, Legacy PLC are going agile. Hey! Oh, fantastic. That's more like it. All right, so what I'm going to do is talk to some of the people at Legacy PLC on their journey, on their agile journey. Should we go and talk to some of the people? Here's portfolio manager Ben. He's swimming through a river of bureaucracy, preparing for annual budgeting, or annual planning as it's sometimes called in some places. The agile transformation hasn't yet started. For 6 months, it's been deemed the most important thing the organisation's got to do, but it can't start till next year when the budget's approved. Hey? Great. Dan hates this time of year, so all the stakeholders, they're all fighting for budget, and they're giving him every kind of blue sky request that they can to get that budget. And the worst thing is he has to go and talk to the teams who are busy doing really important delivery work, and he has to pull them away from that and discuss things that may or may not happen in a year's time. It's a nightmare. He's got 150 outlined business cases to prepare with his team. He's got a substantial team to help with this as well. The worst thing is, most of those will never get started. All right? So, he's saying, well, if you can help me, you agile folks, I'd be very grateful with that. So, the transformation happens, all that good stuff. They've quadrupled their stationary budget. You have to enter a Jira ticket before you poop. They've gone agile. Everybody's happy. It's high fives around, but hey, maybe it's too early for high fives. So I revisit Ben a year later. Ben's mood is not good. His soul is feeling as dark as this photograph here. He's saying, well, I still hate annual budgeting. Nothing's really changed. Oh, actually, something has changed. Instead of outline business cases, I've got to prepare some lean business cases. Woohoo! And the difference here is that there's a few more less bits of information to fill in. But he's saying that's not the thing that takes me the time. It's all those conversations that take me the time, and I've still got to pull those teams away from their critical work. Not enjoying it. The worst thing, I've got to do more business cases this year because the business thinks we can do more because we're agile. But then they're cutting the funding as well, so I've got less budget and less will be started. He's not a happy man, and he's feeling let down by the whole the agile thing. So surely our agile story can't be that bad throughout Legacy PLC. Well, it's not. Here's delivery manager Vicky, and she's loving the agile. Right. Her team are loving it too. So they've really embraced agile's connection to the customer. They feel a real connection to the customer. They've been together for a long time, so they've had a chance to know each other, and they trust each other, and they feel they're really working to position. Vicky says, we found our flow. We can really kind of understand what we can deliver, and I can I can keep stakeholders satisfied more than I've ever been able to do. She's really loving the way you can embrace that continual improvement. She feels the team's becoming a high-performing team. And the great thing is they can solve their own problems. They don't have to go to her and burden her with all of that. She's loving it. So I go and visit Vicky a month later. Vicky, what's going on? Your office, it's emptier than the Brighton branch of the Conservative Club. So Vicky says, yeah, well, my budget's gone. It's been pulled. My team have gone. And she went to the management about this, and they said, hey, it's okay. There's some budget next year. You could have a completely fresh team. Like, it's a good thing. Oh, dear. And then she was flapping around going, oh, God, there's an incident coming. Where's Kevin? Kevin was one of the guys in her team. You know what? These are made-up fictional stories, but they're based on reality. and I think anybody who's worked in large organizations are going to understand. Probably people in startups are going, what are you on about? But if you've worked in large organizations, you'll be familiar with this madness. And it's often the case that any change in a large organization, any meaningful change in sort of an agile transformation, usually goes on at the team level. And agile operates in a bit of a bubble. And it's constrained by a traditional management paradigm. And this is particularly the case with funding, because when it comes to the serious business of money and investment, people are scared to change. They've got habitual processes, the sort of thing Dan was talking about earlier. I think all of us know we can do better. And this is what this talk is about, because I think we could do better. We can build something better, but just like the beautiful city of Rome wasn't built in a day, I don't think you're going to implement an overnight agile funding revolution in your company. You're going to have to take a more gentle approach. You're going to have to take an evolutionary approach, and this is what this is about. We talk about some of the problems of funding, and then we give you some ideas about how you might be able to nudge your organization in the right direction to start an evolution. So how are we going to do that? First of all, we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive on why project funding fails. Secondly, I'm going to show you what some of the alternatives are, and I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour of the new world of agile funding. And then, given we've got some different alternatives to funding, we go and look at how we can sort of nudge our way there and start an evolution, how we can try and achieve those aims of funding in the new agile world. And then we'll conclude and have a quick look at what the promised land is all about and what it means to be there, both for your organization and the people who are on your teams. All right, so it's time to be crystal clear about why project funding is failing us. And it's failing us because times have moved on. These practices are decades old. Business has moved on, and we're in a very fast-moving world these days. So let's have a look at why that project manager is crying. So the first reason he's crying is because in most large organizations, budgeting revolves around an annual planning cycle. Anybody who's been involved with this process, which I have, I was at one point that portfolio manager, Ben, they'll know the complexities, how time-consuming it is, and some of the problems. I think the problems are well documented. If you've never read Beata Bogsdess's Implementing Beyond Budgeting, and this is a particular area of interest for you, I would read it. It's an awesome book, and it gives a whole load of reasons, which could take a talk in its own right, about why budgeting is failing. Now, we're all agilists in the room. Just a quick scan of these. You'll understand that actually some of these problems are really at loggerheads with Agile. One of the cornerstones of Agile is that ability to adapt to change, right? And annual planning, by its very nature, is annual, And when it happens, decisions are often made too early. They're often made they're often made by people too high up in the organization, not people close to the action. And they're often made on assumptions that are really going to get outdated in a kind of 6, 12-month period, all right? This is definitely outdated. It was a gift to us from McKinsey 100 years ago. Let's thank them for that. Now, you could, of course, be in the awesome position where you don't have to do annual budgeting, but you're just relying on projects. But usually, actually, annual budgeting goes hand in hand with project budgeting and a project-oriented approach in organizations. And there's some known problems with this. And I think Mick Kirsten does a pretty good job in his book, Project to Product, of explaining some of the reasons why project-oriented approaches are failing us today. First is this business of the iron triangle. I'll be talking about the iron triangle a lot in this talk. The iron triangle, that's how project success is measured, whether it's on time, on scope, on budget. Now, this, of course, it's like an iron triangle, right? It's not a Play-Doh triangle. You know, it gives absolute inflexibility in scope. And when you've got inflexibility in scope, the businesses can't chase the highest value opportunistic items that come along at the time, right? The other thing about projects is it's short-sighted. Your products in your organization, they're going to last, hopefully they're going to last for a long time, right? Years, many years. A project is short-sighted, and what tends to happen is there tends to be a pretty bad side effect of that, which is people focus on delivering features rather than actually looking after the long-term health and maintainability of the system. I'm finally going to come to teams as well, because actually projects are not great for teams. What you end up is teams being mobilized at the start of a project, then being disbanded at the end of the project. So there's a lot of team churn, and there's also, you get this kind of side effect in a lot of organizations where there's complex assignments. Like people might be assigned to multiple projects at once, which actually is pretty bad for the flow of work. So projects, not great either. Right. Okay, just going to take a drink. So, let's have a look. Both of these processes tend to be quite bureaucratic. And bureaucracy is a bit of an organization killer. I'm going to do a quick survey. Who likes doing value add, meaningful work for your organization? Put your hands up. Oh my God, all of you. Ridiculous. Who likes bureaucratic paper pushing? Oh, God, there's one over there. One taker. All right, look. No one likes pointless red tape and bureaucracy. It takes you away from the kind of meaningful value-add work you want to do. Also makes you angry. Makes you angry about how hard it is to get stuff done. You know, and I'm assuming you guys are like the creme of the creme of like tech people, because you try and better yourselves by coming to conferences to learn how to work harder and better. You know, and the thing is, none of you like that bureaucracy, and you're all good people. And when organizations have too much bureaucracy, good people like you leave. What happens when good people like you leave? Organization goes downhill. What happens when the organization goes downhill? Well, actually, what happens is they make more mistakes. And what do to help prevent those mistakes? They put in more bureaucracy, and then more people leave. It's a downward spiral, and it's been mentioned by Jim Collins in this book, Good to Great, which is a fantastic book. Now, he's called this the bureaucratic death spiral, and traces this downward trajectory of organizations that are burdened by bureaucracy. On the flip side, he charts high-performing organizations and states that they have very minimal amount of bureaucracy. It's not just a problem for performance, it's a huge cost problem. So Gary Hamel, Michel Zazzini wrote this paper, which is called the $3 trillion price for busting bureaucracy. $3 trillion is the opportunity cost in the US alone of getting rid of needless bureaucracy in all the organizations within that country. So imagine what cost savings there are in your organization for busting bureaucracy. All right. You might have noticed I had a bit of a downer on projects and project-oriented approaches. You know, they've got the world a long way. and projects will be continued to use for the right thing. And the right things are kind of those single one-off funding instances, generally for quite simplistic work items. All right? So if the project isn't the tool of choice and isn't the vehicle of choice for our funding, what do we want to do? Let's go and take a look at the new world of Agile funding. And this will be a quick tour of the world of Agile funding. Right. The simplest thing you can do is fund teams. So you have a bunch of teams in your organization. You fund them for the long term. Simples. Give them some of the highest priority work that the organization has to do, right? Easy peasy. Second thing you do is fund products. What this involves is getting a bunch of people aligned around products in your organization, and then you fund the people who are contributing to the product, and you fund the materials that that product uses, which usually mostly cloud infrastructure costs for us, and you fund that for the long term. Right. This has become very popular with all the modern product orientation and the fact that Scrum mentions product a lot. But some businesses, quite rightly, they go, what are our products? We sell products. I'm a retailer. I sell drills and bolts, good stuff like that. That's my product. What's the product that you're delivering? And so some bright spark with a lucrative consultancy career ahead of him said, oh, I know, let's make our product the value stream. Let's fund value streams. And just in case you're not aware of what a value stream is like a line of business in an organization. Small organizations just have one or two. Big organizations have many of these. And it starts off with some sort of customer request, goes through touch points of the business, and then ends up with a delivery of value to the customer and some kind of value to the organization as well. So fund value streams. Align a load of people around value streams. Fund those people and all the materials they need to maintain that value stream and develop it to get return on investment. Then the Scaled Agile framework came along, and they said, oh, this is all too easy. Why don't we split value streams into development value streams and operational value streams? What we'll do is we'll fund development value streams, but we won't call them development value streams. We'll probably call them programs, but we might call them agile release trains, which we're going to abbreviate to ARTS. Let's fund ARTS. Anybody confused? A lot of people were, including a lot of SAFE consultants. So, hey. So there might appear to be an ocean between these methods, but this is where the geographers and geologists in the audience go, ooh, that's Pangaea, the place where all the continents came from. It is. All our funding methods come from the same place, really, which is the premise that we don't fund individual work items like projects and features. We fund the people and the things for a duration. All right? Okay. Now, I think we could get all us agilists in a room and we could go, what's the ideal implementation of a product funding approach? And we just wouldn't agree. All right? But I think what we could agree on is a bunch of values that we're trying to implement when we implement our funding. So these are things that I think are some common goals we're trying to achieve through agile and product-based funding. The first is success is measured by value, not by an iron triangle of on time, on scope, and within budget. That allows your teams to chase the stuff that makes the highest impact for the organization at any time. It allows them to be opportunistic. We're looking for long-lived product teams. I know there's some sort of, debate now about dynamic reteaming and all that, but I think a long-lived product team is a good thing. And it's much better than an ephemeral project team. And what this does, it allows teams to get teamy and to really be able to team well together. It allows them to master their domain. It allows them to master the product area that they're working on. It allows them to master the technology. Gives us delegated decision making, not centralized control. What this does is you're moving decisions closer to the action, really, to the people who are best placed to make the decision. Now, that gives the people more agency, also gives the organization faster flow of decision making because it doesn't have to go up and then come down. we're funding a product life cycle. So your project is just short-sighted, but we're funding the whole product life cycle. And what that does is it helps to ensure the long-term maintainability of the product. Now, underpinning all of this, and I'm going to go on about bureaucracy a bit today, but I'm thinking MVB, minimal viable bureaucracy rather than wasteful activities, right? You obviously need a little bit of bureaucracy, but we don't want it overpowering. We want to get people doing really meaningful work, interesting work, rather than paper pushing, right? So that's important. Okay, should we start an evolution? How are we going to do that? Well, how do we get from where, obviously the 100-year-old annual budgeting kind of process through our decades-old project management process to where a lot of organizations are today, where they find themselves constrained, where Agile is constrained by everything that went before. How do we get some more business agility and some better product funding? And this is what I'm going to do in this section. I'm going to give you, first off, I'm going to give you some nudges, like this mother elephant pushing a little baby. In our evolutionary approach, we do believe in nudging, like giving organizations safe little pushes that take them in the right direction, but keep people on board, even people who are sort of, averse to change, like finance departments. We want to keep those people on board in the process, right? So my first nudge is this: ride the project. Sounds dramatic, but it's not. So I'm pretty sure that if you went back to your organization and when annual budgeting is rubbish, we're going to get rid of it. It's not a battle you're going to win. It's not a fight you're going to win. So our first nudge is really simple. It's saying, let's live with what we've got and game the system. Let's fund long-lived teams with annual planning and budgeting and project budgets. So it's a really simple one where we put in a stable base of long-lived teams. That'll be him. And then, later on we'll explore how we can get something a bit more nimble and agile. That'll be that beautiful bird who is riding off the back of the project budget. So what does that look like in practice, and what does the change look like? Well, currently you'll be in this place if you're following a project-oriented approach. You'll use the annual project budget to define well-defined work. That might be a project, it might be a set of features, it might be a safe epic or something like that. Now what we're moving to is a situation where we are using that annual project budget, we're sort of hijacking it to get our goal of funding long-lived teams. So we're moving from well-defined work to well-defined product teams. This works really well with, people say the 12-month cycle is a real hindrance. It's not. It is if you do that, because that is volatile. The work changes all the time. But if you fund this, these aren't particularly volatile. Well, they're not most of the time. It's stable. It's relatively stable. And, the annual budget isn't a hindrance. So I'll give you an example of where this happened. So this was a traditional telco who had a traditional portfolio and project management approach. They used to ask for something like this at project submission, and anybody who's familiar with project management, is that anybody in the office? Office. Anybody in the studio at the moment? So we've got some project managers there. You heard of work breakdown structure? Yeah, essentially, this is like a simple representation of what would actually be a hideous Microsoft project plan. And it defines the project, the different phases in it, the different work packages that contribute to the phase, and the different activities that contribute to the work packages. So, it'll look much bigger than this in reality. And so what this organization did, it wanted to fund long-lived teams. It evolved that and got agreement from finance to evolve that to a people breakdown structure where, we're contributing people to this value stream. We could contribute multiple programs, but we're contributing one. And then all of these are the teams that are on the program. You see they're duplicated over here, but they had to do this because they had to do CapEx and OpEx splits for finance's forecasts. So they moved from what is a work breakdown structure to a people breakdown structure. Okay, all right, 10 minutes. I'm going to go a little bit over, sorry. So this defines what you, the price you pay. This defines exactly, so this defines what you're spending the money on. Actually, what investors will want to know in your organisation is what you're going to get back for the money. All right, it's it's very unlikely you're going to go to Warren and say, "Look, Warren, just give me some money to do some stuff." So how do we soften the influence of the iron triangle, which is what we've previously used to give confidence to investors that we're going to deliver what they want? Now, so we're trying to turn this into something a bit more palatable, like this nice lump of Swiss cheese here. Right, okay. So how do we get more flexibility about defining the work we're going to do? Well, there's several options to this. The first option, I think this is where a lot of agile projects are today, is that I can't think of any better name for it. It's a blurry triangle. It basically defines a high-level scope, and then that scope is allowed to evolve throughout the period of the development, right? It's better than where we've been from, requiring a detailed scope at the start of budget submission. So we can get beyond that, because that has some inflexibility around high-level scope items. So what some organizations try, and this was a bit of a part of SAFE as well, is rolling wave planning, where basically you put distinct breakpoints throughout a year, like quarters, and you say, right, at those points, we're going to be able to change those high-level scope items. And those time periods, usually you've heard of quarterly planning. Quarterly planning would do this. You've heard of PI planning, a lot of you, program increment planning, which is like, it's usually less than quarters, sort of like 12-week periods, where you'd actually revise what the scope is. So there's distinct points that the teams and the organization know about. So better than that is outcomes. That's a good first step, by the way. That's a good first step to take an organization who needs the comfort of a plan. But where you want to probably get to is something outcome-based, like OKRs, where you actually just going in with funding with a well-thought-out outcome, and they really do need to be well thought out. And you're asking for the block of money with some well-thought-out outcomes that the team hope to achieve. And that's the popularity of OKRs today. How did this work at a business that I've seen this working? Well, this was a retailer. What they did when they submitted for their funding, they made a submission with all the items, all the initiatives that they were going to do in that year. Now, I've changed the names. But you get the idea. They'd submit this, and these would have been individual project requests in the old days. So now we're looking for one block of funding. So we've already simplified this. And at these various points throughout the year in quarters, these could be changed, added to, taken away, or reprioritized. All right. Now, what they did as well is that they defined the outcomes as well. So it's a bit of a hybrid approach. And there were some metrics that we hope that these initiatives would push and change with a value associated with them. Now, the really good thing with this is the stakeholders didn't really mind if this stuff changed, as long as you could keep the return on investment the same. So it gave the teams more flexibility. Now, going more outcome-based, you need to go and trust your teams. But I think if you trust your teams, they will feel more agency, and they'll pay you back in spades for that trust. Another way to garner trust, if you're in a team, is to actually be completely transparent and give feedback about how you're progressing towards those outcomes. And so in this section, really, we're talking about evolving insight. And this is about two things, really. It's about closing the loop on those outcomes, making sure that we're heading towards them, but also, and this is the bit that nobody likes to do, is keep your financial masters happy. Yeah, keep finance happy. It's quite hard, actually, as it comes to mind. All right, so the idea is we want to be this owl. We want to be flying through a hectic forest at speed, eyes on the target, and making wise decisions to be able to reach our target, all right? I'm not going to go too much into this. I could spend all day talking about metrics. I think Carl could spend many more days than me talking about metrics. But, I'm just going to give an example. This was from a telecoms PLC. They essentially, they basically reported progress against plan beforehand. They were addicted to their plans. And what they did is, on the front page of the report, the plan took second stage. You see, actually, what's being delivered here is doesn't hold much space, but the outcomes are very prominent. So the outcomes are prominent, And what we've done really as well is we've far simplified the financial reporting, because what we're looking at doing, well, you know, when you're actually going to implement long-lived teams, it really does really simplify your financial reporting. Really what you're doing is you're just looking at actually a burn rate guardrail and whether you're going above it or below it. It's not actually difficult. So it's far simplified the financial reporting as well. Right, I've got to rush through this. Those are our 3 nudges. There'll be lots of hurdles on the way. I'm only got time to talk about one, but it's a big one. Most enterprises, who's got something like this at the place they work? Are there any architect imposters in the room? Right, it's all your fault. Most large organizations have an average of 650 different systems. They range from small SaaS systems to big ERPs that may support many value streams. Finding your product in amongst that lot's hard. Maybe Scrum will help you. A product is a vehicle to deliver value. It has a clear boundary. Stop right there. Where's your clear boundaries in that? I don't know. Trouble is, it's hard to find clear boundaries. And I've been working with a PLC recently who started off with, that's their first question, how do we identify products in this mess? So we came up with a solution together. It's basically, we've called it a product group. So we're breaking down their organization and teams into some coarse-grained teams that have common customers, common internal stakeholders. They deal with common capabilities. The teams are completely dedicated to these product groups. They have a common set of objectives. And they may look after many products or applications or services or value streams or infrastructure or whatever you want to call it, right? And I'm not fussy about the word product group either there. This gives the accountability and dedicated team ownership, but it also allows for something which is really important. As you'll know in your organizations, some products are in a functional stasis, maintenance mode. Others are being fervently worked on. Right. That's the only problem I'm going to talk about. I've only got that time, and I keep getting flashed up little signs, but I've only got a few minutes left, I promise. Let's talk about the promised land. So what I want to talk about is the benefits to the organization and the benefits for the employees. All right. So this is a bit of a recap. We talked about our product and agile funding aims. They're there. I'm not going to repeat them. And we talked about some nudges. The first was nudge 1. Nudge 1, ride the project. It gave us long-lived product teams funded by the annual budgeting process. It gave us funding the product lifecycle rather than a project. We had soften the triangle, which, remember, was all about being able to have more flexibility around your scope. And what that did was it set up your criteria for measuring success. And it also gave delegated decision-making. You know, if we went to an outcome-based approach, we're letting the teams make quite a lot of decisions. And finally, oh, damn. Right, come on. It's going so well there as well. Finally, we've got nudge 3, which is evolving insight. We closed the loop on measuring our success criteria. Now, underpinning all of this, and I'm going to mention it again, minimum viable bureaucracy. All of this simplified all of these activities. And what you'll notice, that the shrewd amongst you would have known that actually we're giving a portfolio less funding items to deal with by doing this. So we've automatically decreased the amount of work and bureaucracy that we're going to do. Right, so that's the benefits for an organization. What are the benefits for people who work there? I'm going to make a nod to Dan Pink, right? What did Dan Pink say that knowledge workers were looking for in the world? Hey, we've got such knowledge in the room. Autonomy, mastery and purpose. I do believe if you do this stuff, you're going to give individuals and teams more agency, more autonomy, more decision making. I do believe you're going to give them mastery, especially if you keep them aligned to a product and in a domain. They get to understand that product domain and they get to understand the technology and ways of working. I think you give them purpose. You know, we're trying to reduce the bureaucracy. We're trying to increase the meaningful work. So I think this really does make life better for people actually working within the organization as well as the organization itself. Now, I hope I've convinced you that it's a good journey to take, but it's going to be a hard journey. you're going to have to undo some stupid stuff. All right? It's going to be hard. But along the journey as well, you're going to have to check yourself and make sure that anything that you're putting in place is not adding to the bureaucratic burden and is just adding value. All right? The journey's hard, but I truly believe it's a journey that's really worth taking. I hope I've managed to convince you of that today, and I hope I've armed you with a few ideas to help you think about starting your own evolution.